Hello, this is the first of our playthrough series of videos about the game Supply Lines of the American Revolution, the Northern Theater, published by Hollandspiele Games. And I think actually what we will probably do in this video is just confine ourselves to setting up the game, and then the next video will start with turn one. So what we have here is the map, and it's impossible for me to have the map be visible in one look within Vassal and also have it be readily legible. So I'm just going to leave it at this stage, this level of resolution for now, and we'll probably pretty frequently we'll be zooming in even closer. I made 2 videos about this game already that I would recommend watching if you're not familiar with the game, of watching those 2 videos before you start watching this video and the subsequent playthrough videos. The first video, in the first video, I talk about, well, besides just describing the basic features of the point-to-point map that the game is played on, I talk about moving armies and building supply lines in the game, and then in the second video I talk about the battle sequence that's used in the game. But I'm not going to revisit those topics here. I'm just going to move on to, well, let's start with victory conditions. The Patriot victory conditions are largely controlled by the Patriot support track. So let me zoom in on that a little bit. Oh, maybe that's too big. Oh no, it's not. So this track right here. This is the Patriot support track marker right here. So this is where it starts the game at. And essentially, to win the game, the Patriots want to push this marker here, and then down here all the way to the Treaty of Alliance space. As soon as the Patriot support marker reaches the Treaty of Alliance space, the game is automatically over, and the Patriots win the game regardless of what the British possess on the board or are doing on the board or anything else like that. That's an automatic victory for the Patriots. To push this marker to the right, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but the basic way of doing it is for the Patriots to attack and defeat a crown army with a leader. So for instance, and this is going to come up early in our playthrough, notice that at the start of the game there's 4 Patriot units in Cambridge, and 2 more in this point with a leader. And there in Boston, there's a crown army with 4 units or strength points. And so if the Patriot player can get this army into Cambridge and then have that army attack in Boston and win the battle, that will push the marker 1 to the right. However, I should emphasize that for the marker to be moved 1 to the right, the Patriot army does not have to defeat a British army with a leader. It can be any British army. So even if this leader was not in Boston, if the Patriots could attack Boston and defeat it in the battle, then that would still move the Patriot marker, the Patriot support marker 1 to the right. The British do have an opportunity to move the Patriot support marker 1 to the left. However, it only does that if it defeats a Patriot army with a leader. So if Boston on the first turn of the game were to attack the army in Cambridge as it stands, that would not move the support marker 1 to the left on the Patriot support track, because the army in Cambridge does not have a Patriot leader on it. So that's a fundamental asymmetry in how the support marker moves across the Patriot support track. All else being, in a certain crucial respect, it's easier for the Patriots to move it right than it is for the British to move it left. Another feature of the support marker, the movement of the support marker, is that once it reaches this 4 level, this Declaration of Independence level, then the the British cannot move it back to the 3 level. And the reason why that's important, one reason why that's important is that the placement is that, that these numbers here on the support track, this 2, 3, 4, and 5, the location of the support marker, depending on which area, as it were, the support marker is in, that number tells you how many cities the Patriots will get 2 units of reinforcements during every Patriot reinforcement phase. So another reason that the Patriots want to push the support marker to the right as soon as it possibly can down to this 4 level is then that will result in the Patriots for the remainder of the game getting 2 units of reinforcements in 4 cities during every reinforcement cycle instead of 3, the 3 cities that they're getting at the start of the game. So just to summarize, during the playthrough, what we'll be doing as a Patriot player is just trying to push that support marker in any way we can. And the way to do that is by defeating defeating British armies in battle. Now there's like a post-battle sequence that will allow the support marker to be pushed even additional spaces to the right, but all that is premised on the Patriots initially defeating the Crown Army in a battle. So it starts with that. So the Patriots will be looking to attack Patriot armies at every opportunity if there's any reasonable chance of success in order to try to push the marker to the right. Maybe I should add that if the Patriots attack a Crown Army and lose the battle, that does not move the marker to the left. So that's an important consideration when the Patriots have to decide whether to attack a Crown Army or not. Essentially, the only cost associated with losing an attack is the potential loss of units in the attack. You don't risk your position. The Patriots don't risk the position of their support marker on the track. The Crown, on the other hand, they win the game by first of all not allowing the support marker to reach the Treaty of Alliance, but that's not the only thing the Crown needs to do to win the game. They also need to hold victory cities at the end of the game, and there are 6 victory cities on the map. There's Quebec. They're the cities with a crown emblem in them. So there's Quebec, there's Boston, there's Albany, there's New York, there's Philadelphia, and York. Those are the 6 victory cities. To start the game, the Crown's victory conditions are holding 2 victory cities at the end of the game. However, and that will continue as long as they don't ask for reinforcements. However, and I'm not going to give a detailed analysis or argument for this, but it's not possible for the Crown to win the game without asking for reinforcements. The way the Crown will ask for reinforcements in the game is that in an initial phase in a given turn, they'll take this marker and they'll move it up to, I won't move it up there, but they move it up to the Nova Scotia space. And then the number of reinforcements they get as a result of that in the following turn will be this number of units. So the first time the Crown asks for reinforcements, on the next turn they'll get 6 units of reinforcements. If they ask for reinforcements again, they'll get 10 units. If they ask for reinforcements a third time, they'll get 10 units, and so on. However, asking for reinforcements has a couple of consequences. One, a good consequence is that as the British ask for reinforcements, they start to generate supplies in Nova Scotia. And I won't explain why that's important now, but that will be a value, that can be those Nova Scotia supplies can be a valuable lifeline for the British, particularly early in the game. But an adverse consequence of asking for reinforcements is that every time you do it, it increases the requirements for victory. So the first time that the Crown asks for reinforcements, it increases the number of victory cities they're required to hold at the end of the game from 2 to 3. And then the second time they ask for reinforcements, and that increases the number of victory cities they're required to hold to 4, and so on. The fourth time they ask for reinforcements is kind of a special case. We'll get to that if it comes to that. And then the other very important consequence of the Crown asking for reinforcements is that every time they ask for reinforcements, that pushes the support marker 1 to the right. So that's something that the British player has to weigh every time they ask for reinforcements, because if they do, that's automatically going to push it 1 to the right. The pass track determines the length of each turn. Well, let's look at the game. Actually, before we look at that, let's look at the game turn record track. So this is the turn record track. There are 12 turns in the game. The third turn and the 8th turn are winter turns. There are special rules for winter turns. Essentially what happens is the Patriot Army disbands. They go home during the winter turns. So that can provide a bit of a respite and a bit of a reset for the British. An additional thing I should point your attention to is that after the second winter, so for the last 4 turns of the game, the Patriots do not get reinforcements. So really what the British should not lose hope early. They should really, if they're alive at the end of, say, the first turn after the second winter turn, then they might have a shot even if things are bad, because at that point there'll be 3 more turns without any reinforcements, without the Patriots receiving any reinforcements. So the British, often playing the British in this game, it's all about trying to just hang on until you get a good opportunity to use the things that are to your advantage to try to turn the tide. The length of a given turn is determined by the pass track. There's a really clever mechanism and simple mechanism for determining the length of a turn and the order of turns. Each player rolls a die. The highest of the 2 die determines the placement of the pass tracker at the start. So if the Patriots roll a 4 and the Crown rolls a 1, then the pass track starts in the 3 to 4 spot, and then the Patriots, by virtue of rolling the higher of the 2 die, would get the first turn. And essentially a turn consists of, for a given player, just consists of either activating a force on the board in some capacity or other, or moving the pass marker 1 towards 0. And when the pass marker reaches 0, the turn is immediately over, and there's a post-turn sequence, and then the next turn will start. So we've already talked about what the Patriots want to do at the start of the game. They're looking to, if you just look at the initial board state, the Patriots have an excellent opportunity to move the support marker to the right by attacking Boston. If they can get this army here and then move into Boston to attack, notice they'd be going in with a 2 unit advantage. Remember that the victor in a battle is the side with the highest combined number of units and leaders in the space. And as we'll see, the Crown Army in Boston has very little opportunities to inflict damages on the Patriot Army early on. And so if the Patriots can just get an army attacking into Boston, I mean they can guarantee that the support marker is going to move one to the right. And if they can get two attacks in early, then they can move it 2 times to the right. Um, so that's what the Patriots are going to be looking to do in the first during the first turn of the game. They're looking to attack Boston, early and often. The British have a bunch of bad choices to make. They don't have any armies or leaders at all in the southern half of the map. In fact, their only armies are in Boston, Quebec, and Montreal. One thing they could do is to build a supply line from Quebec to Montreal and then down along these forts in order to try to get an army kind of behind the army in Cambridge, as it were. But that's going to take an enormous investment of supplies and troops to get an active, good-sized army into this area that can attack either Cambridge or Albany. Right now, there's a total of 6 units between Quebec and Montreal, but if you count the spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, currently there's only enough units, British units, to extend a line of troops and supplies into Fort Ticonderoga. No troops remaining here. So the British would have to, the British are going to ask for reinforcements, but the British will have to devote significant reinforcements, send some significant reinforcements to Quebec to actually generate an active army down here that can be a threat to either Cambridge or Albany. But that's one option the British want to consider. The other one is to try to say, but the disadvantage of that is that you're leaving Boston to sink or swim by itself early on, because the British don't get any reinforcements on the first turn of the game. The only way for the British to get troops into Quebec is to do sea movement. That's a 2-turn process. When the British move units by sea, the first step is to move units from a port city to the sea box, and then in a subsequent turn, move units from the sea box to a port city. So it will take a minimum of 2 turns for the British to get troops from Quebec into Boston. Now, if the British decide to prioritize that, have that literally be like the first two actions that they take, then they can stop an attack in Boston. They can't stop an attack, but they can make it not worthwhile for the Patriots to try to attack, because they can build up such a numerical advantage in Boston that the Patriots would not have any chance of winning the battle. But of course, the downside of that is you're tying up all your troops in Boston, and as we'll see, the army in Boston will have very few. In fact, they won't. If the Patriots play halfway competently, the army in Boston won't be able to generate any supplies, and so a huge contingency of British forces will just be sitting in Boston with no opportunity to generate enough supplies to really do anything. And so that's the downside of that approach. Another thing the British can try to do, if they get a favorable pass track result at the start of the game, is just to push the pass marker down to 0 before the Patriots have a chance to launch an attack into Boston, and just kind of just get that first turn over as quickly as possible. That, of course, doesn't solve the fundamental problem in Boston, but it's a way to just kind of delay, delay, delay as much as possible, get to that first winter turn where there's a reset, and then hopefully there's a possibility that at the end of the kind of reset that goes on during the end of winter turns, there might present a window of opportunity for the British to go on the attack. So I think that's all I'm going to say in terms of a setup. Of course, there's a lot to the game that I haven't talked about yet, but that will all come out in the playthrough. So I will end the video here. In my next video, we will start with we'll get the pass track set up, and then we'll start the sequence of play.